You can tell a lot about a family by the way they say your name. Mine says Ava like it's an apology they regret making. 3 years ago, I walked out of the Preston house with nothing but a box of personal files and a rusted Honda Civic. Since then, I've lived in a small tiny apartment, thrift store furniture, peace and quiet bought with pride I can barely afford. I thought that was the price of independence. Then, one morning, a thick ivory envelope arrived hand-delivered, sealed with the family crest in gold. The honor of your presence is requested at the wedding of Charlotte Preston and Daniel Hollingsworth. I almost laughed. They hadn't requested my presence at Thanksgiving, birthdays, or funerals. But for Charlotte's wedding, the one plastered across society blogs, they suddenly remembered they had 2 daughters. For a minute, I considered tossing it. Then I saw the embossed initials of the Preston Family Trust at the bottom corner. The same trust that had accidentally cut me out of my inheritance. That detail felt like bait, and I've always been the kind of fool who checks the hook. When I drove up the long marble driveway, the house looked exactly as it had the day I left: columns, fountains, and an army of landscapers pretending they weren't listening. My mother stood at the top of the stairs like she was greeting press, not blood. "Ava," she said, in that perfect hostess tone. "How brave of you to come. Alone, of course?" I smiled tightly. "You always said I was independent." Inside, everything smelled like white lilies and old money. Staff moved in quiet synchronization, arranging silverware worth more than my yearly rent. Every detail screamed we won, and I could feel my younger self shrinking somewhere deep inside me. Charlotte floated down the staircase in a cloud of silk and diamonds. "Ava," she sang, wrapping me in a hug that felt like a camera flash, bright, fake, over too soon. "It's been forever," she said. "Are you still doing those computer things?" "Investigations," I replied. "Freelance now." "Oh, that's adorable," she said, turning to her bridesmaids. "My sister's a detective." "Isn't that cute?" Laughter. Soft, polite, cruel. It took everything I had not to walk out. But I stayed. Because sometimes you have to stand in the same room as your past to see just how far you've really come. During dinner, my father took the head seat like a king surveying his empire. "To Charlotte," he said, raising a glass, "and to the bright future she's about to inherit." The word inherit caught my ear. He noticed. "Relax, Ava," he said, smiling without looking at me. "You've made your own way. You don't need the burden of our business anymore." The table chuckled. I smiled back, but something behind my ribs twisted hard. When the toasts ended, I slipped outside for air. The manicured garden glittered with fairy lights. Voices drifted through the French doors: my father and the family accountant, speaking in the tone people use when they think money protects them from consequences. "Transfer goes through Monday," the accountant said. "We'll need Charlotte's final signature before then." "Good," my father replied. "She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. It's cleaner this way, no trail leading back to us." My breath caught. Charlotte's signature. A transfer. Cleaner this way. I'd heard that tone before, the same tone he used when he shut me out of the company. Only this time, it sounded like something worse than favoritism. It sounded like fraud. I left the party before dessert. Back in my car, the ivory invitation sat on the passenger seat. I turned it over, tracing the gold crest with my thumb. That crest wasn't just decoration, it was a corporate logo, the mark of the Preston Family Trust. Every property, every asset, every inheritance passed through it. If they were using Charlotte's signature to move money, that meant my family wasn't just rich, they were laundering their own legacy. And Charlotte, whether she knew it or not, she was the perfect scapegoat. As the engine hummed to life, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. 3 years ago, I'd left this house a failure. Tonight, I left as something else. Someone who had finally found a reason to come back. I didn't sleep that night. The city felt too loud, my thoughts louder. Every word I'd overheard played on loop in my mind: transfer, signature, cleaner this way. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up pretending I could rest. I pulled out the one thing I still had from my days at Preston Tech, an old company laptop I'd kept out of sheer spite. It wasn't fancy, but it still carried my access credentials buried in a forgotten server branch. The moment the screen lit up, my heartbeat matched the fan's hum. I typed the old password AR3 Sproject, a cruel little nod to my father's obsession with Greek gods. Access granted. There it was, the Preston Family Trust mainframe. Dormant, encrypted, and supposedly sealed after I'd left. Except someone hadn't sealed it very well. At first, the data looked clean: property transactions, quarterly disbursements, charitable donations that made the family look saintly. Then I noticed something odd: 6 payments labeled maintenance fees to a holding company I'd never heard of, Hollingford Holdings Ltd. I ran a trace. The company's director? Charlotte Preston. Its address? A P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. Its founder? G. Preston. I leaned back, breath shallow. My father was funneling money from the trust into a shell company under my sister's name. On paper, it looked like Charlotte had inherited control of the assets. In reality, she was being set up as the legal owner of a fraud scheme worth tens of millions. And when it unraveled, guess who'd take the fall? Not Gregory Preston. Not the board. Charlotte. The perfect heir. The perfect victim. I wanted to tell her. God, I wanted to. But what would she hear? Her unstable sister, the one who'd stolen company data, spinning another conspiracy theory? They'd used that word unstable like a weapon when I walked away. They'd painted me as the problem, the bitter one, the outcast who couldn't handle losing. No one believed me then. So this time, I wouldn't talk. I'd show them. Morning sunlight crept through my blinds. I opened a new encrypted folder and started building a timeline: emails, transaction receipts, encrypted signatures. Every piece of evidence painted the same picture: a trust systematically drained to finance private offshore accounts. By noon, I had enough to make any journalist's career explode. But I didn't want scandal, I wanted accountability. The difference was subtle, but it mattered to me. I called the only person I still trusted from my old life, Marcus Lane. He'd been Preston Tech systems engineer before they downsized him for refusing to alter records. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he picked up, his voice was the same: tired, sharp, and cautious. Ava Preston, he said. Didn't expect to see that name on my caller ID again. When he finished, the MC smiled. And now, he said, a little surprise from the bride and groom. A montage of memories, because love is built on stories. Laughter. Applause. Lights dimming. My heart began to pound. On the screen, childhood photos flickered: 2 sisters on a beach, messy hair, sand between our toes. Then teenage snapshots, college smiles, engagement portraits. The music swelled, soft and nostalgic. Then the transition flickered. For half a second, I thought it might fail, that all of this had been for nothing. But then, the first document appeared. Preston Family Trust, transfer log, internal record number 01977. Numbers filled the wall. $signs. Offshore routing codes. And at the bottom, authorized by Charlotte Preston. A hush fell. The pianist stopped playing. Someone muttered, "Is this part of it?" Then another document replaced it, email correspondence between my father and his accountant. Once Charlotte signs, move the remainder offshore. Understood, sir. Murmurs rippled through the room. My father's smile froze, hands still mid-gesture. My mother's fingers clenched around her glass. And then the slide changed again. This time, a side-by-side of signatures, Charlotte's and my father's. Identical in placement, format, timestamps. Impossible unless forged. A gasp broke the silence. The groom's mother whispered something harsh. The groom himself turned to Charlotte, confusion clouding his face. I sat perfectly still, watching my family's empire begin to tremble. "Turn it off," my father barked. The text scrambled, fumbling with chords, but Marcus's program was built to resist interference. The screen froze on one final image, a Cayman account statement totaling $12 million. And beneath it, the Preston crest. My father lunged for the projector, yanking cables. The lights flickered, music cut, and the room plunged into uneasy half-dark. Charlotte's voice broke the silence. "Dad, what is this?" No answer. Just his jaw tightening, his eyes searching the room for a scapegoat, and finding me. Of course he did. "Ava," he hissed, striding toward me, voice low but venomous. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said. "Just told the truth." "You've ruined your sister's wedding." "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." Gasps. Whispers. Cameras being raised, because this was the 21st century, and scandal was sport. He reached out, as if he could drag me out by sheer authority. But Charlotte stepped between us. Her eyes were wide, wet, searching. "Is it true? Did you use my name for this?" He hesitated, a second too long. That was her answer. Her voice trembled. "You said the trust was secure." "It is," he snapped. "Don't be dramatic." She shook her head. "No, you're lying. You've been lying." The crowd began to stir, guests whispering, reporters texting discreetly, someone already recording from the balcony. My mother moved in, her tone icy and composed. "Charlotte, this isn't the time." Charlotte turned on her. "When would be the time, Mom? When the SEC calls? When my name's on a subpoena?" Silence. Absolute silence. For the first time in years, I saw my parents look small. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just two people cornered by their own greed. I stood, shaking but steady. "This is what happens," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "When truth is treated like an inconvenience. When loyalty is a one-way contract. You taught us that, remember?" My father glared. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said. "But I can live with regret." "You'll have to live with exposure." Security arrived, unsure who to protect. Guests began filing out. Some whispered apologies to Charlotte. Others avoided her entirely. I didn't move. I watched the dynasty collapse under the weight of its own deception, and felt, for the first time, not vindicated, but free. Minutes later, as chaos buzzed through the hall, Charlotte found me again. Her makeup was ruined, her voice raw. "You did this?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you didn't deserve to take the blame for them." "Neither of us did." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, softly, "You could have told me." "I tried," I said. "You just weren't ready to listen." And then she surprised me, she hugged me. Not tightly, not affectionately. Just long enough to say she understood, finally, what kind of family we came from. As I walked out into the night, the sound of police sirens echoed faintly from the distance. Reporters waited at the gates. Flashes of light. Questions shouted through the air. But I didn't stop. I wasn't running. I was just done standing still. It's strange how silence feels after chaos. The week after the wedding, I found myself sitting in my small apartment, staring at the city skyline, waiting for the noise to find me again, the calls, the threats, the outrage. But none of it came, at least not right away. Maybe they were too busy. Maybe they were finally learning what accountability feels like. The story broke within 48 hours. Preston family accused of corporate misconduct, the headline said. They ran my father's picture, smiling, confident, next to a grainy screenshot from the wedding video that had leaked online. Reporters had eaten it up like a scandal buffet. I didn't feed it. I didn't post, or tweet, or celebrate. Because that wasn't what it was about. I hadn't wanted to destroy them. I'd wanted to be free of them. Freedom, it turns out, doesn't roar. It whispers. It's the quiet after years of defending yourself. Charlotte called a few days later. She didn't ask how I was. Just, if it was true that the money was gone. It's frozen, I said. Pending investigation. Her voice cracked a little. They said I was complicit. You signed what he put in front of you. I trusted him. I sighed. We both did. We didn't talk long. But when she hung up, I realized something. I didn't hate her anymore. For the first time, she sounded like a sister again, not an echo of our parents. Weeks passed. My father resigned from his board positions to focus on family matters. My mother disappeared from public view entirely. Their lawyers went to war with each other. Their empire fractured into lawsuits and frozen accounts. And me? I went back to work. Quietly. The tech startup I'd built years ago, the one they'd laughed at, began getting attention again. Investors wanted to talk. Not because of the scandal, but because they'd finally noticed the results. Funny how exposure can make the truth visible in more ways than one. I moved into a new place a few miles from downtown, nothing fancy, just space that was mine. The walls were bare, the air smelled like paint and coffee, and every time I turned the key, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not the kind you post about. The kind that comes when you stop needing to be believed. I need your help, I said. It's about my family. And it's big. He hesitated. How big? Cayman Islands big. A pause. Then, I'm listening. We met that evening at a diner off the highway, the kind that smelled like burnt coffee and second chances. I slid the USB drive across the table. He plugged it into his tablet, scrolled for a minute, then let out a low whistle. This is serious, Ava. This isn't just fraud. These are federal crimes. If this leaks, your father won't just lose his company, he'll lose everything. I know. And what do you want to do with it? I looked out the window. Expose it. But not yet. He studied me. You're planning something. Let's just say. I want them to understand what it feels like to be cornered. But cleanly. Legally. He smirked. You always did have a flair for drama. Old habits, I said. Over the next few days, Marcus helped me decrypt and duplicate the trust data. He built a single file that would automatically project the trail of transactions, simple, visual, undeniable. All I'd need to do was plug it in and hit play. When he handed me the final USB, he said, "You could send this to the feds today. Walk away a hero." "I don't want to walk away," I said quietly. "I want to finish this myself." He didn't argue. He just nodded. "Then make sure it counts." The next morning, I stood in front of my mirror, invitation in hand. The words "You are cordially invited" shimmered in gold, like an inside joke from the universe. I straightened my jacket, tied back my hair, and whispered to my reflection, "Let's make it a day to remember." The wedding week unfolded like a production, flawless, exhausting, and built on pretense. Charlotte had turned the Preston estate into a stage set. Marble tents, crystal chandeliers, imported orchids that wilted under the July heat. Even the air felt manicured. I arrived 2 days early, officially as family, unofficially as the woman planning a quiet detonation. I kept the USB drive in a silver locket around my neck, close enough to feel its weight, like a heartbeat reminding me why I'd come. Inside, everyone moved with champagne smiles. The planners barked orders, photographers hovered, and Charlotte spun between them like sunlight in motion. When she saw me, she actually looked relieved. "I'm glad you came early," she said. "Mom's losing her mind over the seating chart. You can help manage her, right?" Her tone was soft, almost sisterly. For a second, I saw the girl who used to sneak into my room at midnight to share secrets. Then I remembered the girl who'd testified against me when father accused me of tampering with proprietary data. Still, I smiled. "Sure," I said. "Happy to help." That evening, I walked the corridors like I used to when I lived here, counting the steps between doors, the camera blind spots, the rhythms of the staff. Security had upgraded since I left, but the control systems? Still wired through the old media server. Which meant I could reach the wedding's AV hub without being noticed. The next morning, I dressed like crew, black slacks, white shirt, headset clipped to my belt. To everyone else, I was just another contractor with a clipboard and a purpose. Inside the ballroom, cables snaked across the floor. Screens flickered with test images. A young tech adjusted the presentation loop, soft slides of Charlotte and Daniel smiling at beaches, brunches, endless perfection. He turned to me. "You the AV supervisor?" "Something like that," I said, taking the flash drive from my pocket. "Here, updated version from the planner." He nodded and slotted it in. Just like that, the seed was planted. That night, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. The plan was too simple, too dangerous. All it would take was one wrong move, one tech noticing the extra file, one assistant calling my name at the wrong moment. I sat by the window, staring at the lawn where tents glowed like lanterns. Memories came in waves, my father teaching us how to give a firm handshake, how to smile for investors, and how to control the narrative. He used to say, "Truth is a matter of presentation." Tomorrow, I'd use his own philosophy against him. Morning arrived wrapped in sunlight and nerves. Guests began to pour in, politicians, CEOs, reporters from glossy magazines. Every car that rolled up the drive was another witness I didn't know if I could handle. In the bridal suite, chaos hummed. Charlotte stood in front of the mirror in her gown, radiant and shaking slightly. "Can you zip me?" she asked. I did. Our eyes met in the reflection. "You look beautiful," I said. "Do you mean that?" "I do." And for a heartbeat, I almost regretted everything. Then our mother entered, perfume first, approval last. "Don't forget to smile, Charlotte," she said. "You're marrying into legacy." Her gaze shifted to me. Try not to draw attention today, Ava. I smiled faintly. Wouldn't dream of it. By afternoon, the estate buzzed with champagne and secrets. The ceremony itself was flawless, white petals, gentle vows, applause like ocean waves. But I barely heard a word. My mind ran through sequences: when the reception starts, when the slideshow plays, when the world finally sees the truth. After the kiss, I slipped away to the service corridor. Marcus's program was scheduled for 7:45 p.m., exactly when the toasts would begin. All I had to do was make sure the system didn't glitch too early. I checked the control screen. The file sat quietly among the others, labeled Photo Montage Final. No one would notice until it was too late. As I walked back toward the reception, I caught my father's voice through an open door. The merger will finalize next week. Charlotte signed everything this morning. She has no idea what she's sitting on. A pause. Then laughter. His laughter. Something cold settled in my stomach. Any hesitation had melted away. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person he'd crushed under the weight of his pride. And for once, I had the truth in my hands. As dusk fell, I stepped into the ballroom one last time. Strings played, glasses clinked, the lights dimmed to gold. At the center of the room, Charlotte glowed, oblivious to the storm coming for her family. For a moment, I envied her ignorance, the peace of not knowing. Then I took my seat in the back corner, watching the projector hum to life. The countdown had begun. 5 minutes to the toast. 5 minutes to the truth. The ballroom shimmered with everything money could buy: gold light, crystal glasses, polite laughter. I could feel the tension underneath it, like static waiting to break. A toast was being announced. My father stood with effortless charm, one hand on Charlotte's shoulder, the other holding a glass. He spoke of legacy, honor, family. The crowd soaked it in like gospel. I stared at him, and all I could think was how carefully he'd built this illusion, brick by brick, lie by lie. One afternoon, I got a letter. Handwritten. From my mother. No apology, of course. Just a single line that said, "You could have come to us. You didn't have to humiliate the family." I read it twice, smiled faintly, and tore it in half. Because that's the thing, they'd spent their lives confusing exposure with humiliation. But truth doesn't humiliate. It reveals. Months later, Charlotte showed up at my office. No makeup, no designer suit. Just her. She handed me a folder, documents showing she'd withdrawn from the family trust and was starting over. "I want to earn something that's mine," she said. I nodded. "Good," I told her. "That's the only kind that lasts." She hesitated. "Do you hate them?" I looked past her, out the window where the city glowed faintly against the dusk. "No," I said. "I just finally stopped needing them." The world moved on. The scandal became another headline in the long scroll of the internet. But sometimes, I still think about that night, the lights, the silence, the look on my father's face when he realized the truth had finally outrun him. And every time I do, I don't feel triumph. Just balance. Because in the end, justice doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it just stands there, quiet, patient, inevitable. And for the first time in my life, I knew what that felt like.